So let it be written. So let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. This is a deep dive about finding inspiration when you aren't feeling inspired. James, tell me about your life. Tell me about your D&D life.
And so specifically, finding inspiration when you're not inspired, especially in cases where you're going to be playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons or another RPG, and you're just not in the mood, right? There's a million other things you can imagine yourself doing.
Sure.
And the reason that's important is because for me, I just, like many people, have general anxiety. And to me, if I schedule something like that, a D&D game, even as just a player, especially if it's like a first session, but even if it's a session in the middle of a campaign, there are so many things I can imagine doing that night. You know what I mean? So many things that snuck up on me, so many things that if I did those instead, I might have more fun or enjoy more, but it's fake. It's all made up. and I'm going to say this. Imagine that I'm speaking to me, right? This may not be you, but I'm going to say all the things that I need to hear before a game. It's all made up. These are your friends. These are people you know. This is something that you, at some point, were excited enough to say, yes, I'm going to give you X amount of my time every couple of weeks, maybe every week. I'm going to dive in for X amount of hours, potentially pretend I'm someone else, laugh at the jokes and cry for the failures. I was in on this. Past James said, yes, sign me up. So the fact that present James is saying, really, I'd like to not be signed up anymore, is something that I absolutely have to face every time. And that I have to face with different things. Like, we talk in the quick tips video about watch the trailer. I just talk to the other players. I see what my goals might be. I look at what else I might be doing. But it's so important to remember that your feelings of not really being in the mood don't mean you won't have fun. Some people might be in the mood every time they play, and I suspect that these are the people that are playing as RPGs as much as I wish that I had the time for. But if I were able to dive in more easily, I feel like I'd make a lot more time for it. So I spend a lot of my time reminding myself, you may feel weird about this now, but you're going to have so much fun. And you signed up knowing you'd have fun. And so it's just a lot of convincing myself that, no, I do want to do this. So let's do it.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a healthy conversation because I feel like, this isn't true in every case, but I think there are some cases where when you have a player who flakes out on you or a game master who flakes out on you, it's because they couldn't overcome the lack of inspiration or the feelings of anxiety that can be coupled with the kind of the pressure to perform, especially now when so many games are streamed publicly and recorded forever. But, I just think that that's actually a really cool way to start, James, is just by coming right out and saying, hey, I feel this way. And what I'm about to say is so far removed from what you're saying, but it's a very similar thing, which is it's like my wife and I are homebodies. We are homebodies. We've just become sort of like, and every time we go out with friends, like prior to quarantine and all that stuff, but every time we would go out and hang out or go over for dinner or do those things, every time we were so glad we did. But like you say, it's that same thing leading up to it where it's like, oh, am I going to be tired? How late are we staying? All these things. And then when I get there, all of it melts away like entirely. And I'm like, oh, is it already 11 o'clock? Holy cow. I think a lot of that can be said about D&D as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll still have sessions of games that I absolutely love, like some of my favorite campaigns that I've been in. And, I'll still have many sessions where, yeah, exactly what you guys say, that time leading up of just oh man, I have so much to do. There's so much in life happening. I wish that I could spend this 4 hours of just this, and it feels like so much. And especially, when I'm the one running the game, where I then also have that pressure of everyone's counting on me to run a cool game, and like I feel like I'm definitely going to let them down because this is where I'm at mentally right now going into this, and it can be like such a complicated thing. But yeah, my experience is the same as what both of you guys have said, of like you feel all that, and then the game starts and you get the intro out there, and then suddenly it's all like, oh okay, no, this is fun and this is cool, and I am glad that I'm doing this. And to kind of call back to something Tim said in the last video of like, chances are that you're saying this much more to yourself than is apparent to anybody else. Like I've had a ton of experiences where it's just like, I'll get to the end of a game and be like, that was bad. That was so rough. Like just nothing felt clean. Nothing felt energetic. Like I just felt like I was just rolling through the motions, and then everyone's like, oh man, that was such an awesome game. I was like, oh, I loved that. It was so fun. It's just like, what? Like, really? Like, because I didn't feel that at all. So it's so easy to get in your own head with this sort of stuff and feel like you must have done really poorly, or like you must have let everyone down, or everyone knows that you weren't feeling it today. Like, oh, they definitely know. Like, it's so obvious, and it's probably not obvious, and they probably didn't notice. You know, it's totally okay, even if that feeling doesn't go away once you start. And I've had games where it's just like, okay, this is a get through it game. You know, I'm here, I've committed, I need to do it, and I need to get through. And like, that's okay. Like, it's a game and it's fun, but like sometimes that's just where you're at, and like, you gotta cut yourself some slack sometimes, you know. And again, know that there's a very good chance that no one noticed, and even if people did pick up on it, everyone's probably just like, oh yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're not feeling it. Like, it's the pressure that we put on ourselves to like perform at that top level, you know, is generally we're the least understanding of ourselves when it comes to that, and everyone else will be like, oh yeah, sometimes I'm not feeling it either, and you know, it happens. Like, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, and I think so. Let me tell you what I always like there's a danger of me doing, which is that was a nightmare of a sentence, by the way. So we'll just say, here's a thing I'm going to share. I am in danger of trying to start a new campaign in the middle of the one I'm already running when I'm not inspired. And we've kind of hit on this in other videos, but like, oh man, what if there's a werewolf? Like, I mean, maybe that happened in real life. I think for one of my campaigns, I had an idea that I was going to have the players play as these, like, out of nowhere, because I didn't know what else to do. I handed them like different character sheets, and I was like, okay, you're going to play as bad guys for now. And it was, I guess the point is, I'm going to hit on what James mentioned in the quick tips, which is go to the trailer and watch the trailer. Figure out why this game is cool. What are the themes? What are the elements? And just lean on and reinforce those things. So if your campaign is about being on the run and being small-time criminals, and that's the kind of the core of what you're doing, think of the coolest thing that could happen to emphasize those things, and not necessarily doing what I have been guilty of in the past, which is, oh, let's see, I know I'm going to make this person show up. And it's kind of not within the contract of what everyone really signed up for, but it's almost like grabbing a really spicy thing to try to make something that's boring and bland taste better. I'm like, oh, well, just put a bunch of hot sauce on it. It's like putting ketchup on your campaign. And so looking, and Jeff, you mentioned some of this too, what would the players think is awesome? Go back to the roots, go back to the core, go back to their backgrounds, or like dig deeper, not wider, is probably a way to do it. And I'm really guilty of like, hey, I'm going to start a new hole over here. I was having a contest with myself internally to see how many metaphors I could cram into one point. So you're going to have soup made in a hole with hot peppers in it.
another important thing is I think what you're saying, Tim, about adding the new spicy thing or the new other thing rings true for a lot of people, because when they feel not excited about a game, they're now looking at what is exciting. And I tend to do this in our videos, so please forgive me, but it's a deep dive, so I get to have this, right? But if you think about it, excitement is your body, is some input created an emotional feeling, right? So there was the brain and there's the heart. Let's do it the simple way everybody else does it, okay? The thing is, the only way to your heart is through your brain. I'm trying to make this as not ridiculous as possible. The important thing is, when you originally felt that excitement, something went in your brain and told your heart, get excited. But when you're looking back, you're not. You're trying to go straight to the source. And that's why a new thing can look cool. But to some degree, unless you write down what things you think are cool when they're cool, you don't associate the feeling of being excited with those things. So you have to go back to the things to see what they were. And that's that watch a trailer thing. And I wanted to go a little deeper on that as far as an objective to do this in your games. And I don't feel like an expert at solving this problem, but it is a problem I've dealt with long enough that I have a lot of things that I do to try and help me with this. But that's one of the big things is, even if the idea of whatever your campaign isn't exciting, you're not thinking deeply enough. You're thinking, oh yeah, I don't really want to play that game where there's 4 of us in the town. And I'm like, that's not what's happening. What about that intrigue between you and that person? What about the secret you told last time? What about the wanted poster you found? Those are the things that got you excited. But as humans in general, we have a tendency to look at things so big picture that we're like, oh yeah, that was cool. That thing, that journey we were all going on, that was cool, but it's not anymore. I'm like, yeah, because it's no longer about the journey, right? You're remembering sort of what started the campaign. Like, yeah, you're basically just not allowing, you're not giving those things that were cool to you once before a second look. And simply by doing that, as crazy as it sounds, you will be able to go past them and maybe see other things that were cool, or if you did something last session that did go well, you can go, hey, the players love this, so let me just take that template and to some degree within reason go, yeah, I want to make it so that they have to make that hard decision again. Let's try and work that in because they like that, and you have to stop looking at it as separated parts of this whole, as like this NPC and that NPC, and more like, no, the players have the same brain and the same heart as you, and you have to feed them the things that matter to them to make them excited so that they want to come back next time. All of that to say, you really should give a lot of weight to simply reading a recap of what happened before to just get your mind churning about what things you were excited about at the end of last session.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to, when it comes to like coming up with new ideas, I think it's easy to forget how difficult it is to sort of create from a vacuum. And when you're feeling that sort of lack of inspiration, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, that tends to be how it feels to try to make something when you're sort of in that space. It's just like, I just have this like wash of nothing and I need to like spring forth existence from this complete lack of anything. But exactly like James says, like that's not really the case in RPGs where you have all these different sessions to build on. So it can sometimes just be as simple as just like what James just said of like, look back at what happened, because at least for me, it's way easier to springboard off of an idea to come up with a new idea that follows it than it is to sort of create something from space. So if you're just like, okay, they did this, then they did this, then they did that, they were really excited about this. Like, it's a lot easier to follow step 5 in that chain than it is to like create step 1 in a new thing. So it's okay just to lean into that, and just look back. And I've said it in other videos and I'll say it again here. Worst case scenario, it's totally okay to just go to the players and say, I'm planning next session. What would you guys like to do next session? And I guarantee at least someone, I guarantee, will have some idea of like, oh, we should go talk to this person to ask them about this mystery, or oh, we should, go to this town where we were supposed to figure out what was going on with this, gang of people who was doing that. Like, someone in the game will have something that they're excited to look to next time, and it can just be as simple as asking them hey, what do you want to do? What's exciting? And then they'll tell you, and then you can just do that. And it sounds so simple and so basic, but it really can work wonders sometimes. And like a lot of the games that I play and run make liberal use of that. It's just like, all right, guys, what's going on next session? Who wants to go do what? And people will tell you. They'll find things to be excited about for you if you can't dredge it up within yourself.
Yeah, that's super good advice. Like, I feel like, well, you unmuted. Did you want to say something else? Oh, sorry. You can cut that out or not. You can leave it in. It's up to you. It's a deep dive. Welcome to the show, folks. I'm gonna do something else, which is I'm gonna give you 3 things that I'm kind of making up on the fly. If you absolutely need, like, no, just inspire me. So here are 3 things that you can do to kind of combine the advice that these guys are talking about. But I'm gonna give you essentially frameworks, and then you can reverse engineer it to follow these tips. So here are the 3 things. The first one is someone is after a member of the party. It's a bounty hunter. And so why? So that's the first thing. That's it. You're inspired. There's a bounty hunter after someone in the party. Why are they after them? How much is it? Was it wrongful? Is it right? Is it a secret from their past? Already, boom. So you have one of those springboards, but it's separate. So kind of like what Jeff was talking about, but I'm trying to do a blend of introduce something new and also draw from something. So tie it to something else that happened. Second thing is have a person that the party has dealt with, talked to, spoken to, whatever. They get a letter that the person has died. And so they get this letter and the person has died and there's a dying request in there for the party. What is it? What was it tied to? Who was this person? Why did they die? You know, all of a sudden now it's like, okay, so that's inspiration number 2. And you can kind of do this in any game. It could be a Cthulhu game. It could be, you know, Dragon Grin. It could be Glyph. So, and then the third one is reveal a relationship to an important or famous person in the world to someone in the party. Now, again, these are all things that come with a warning label of you have to stick with the stuff you've decided. You have to stick with your session 0. And so try to work within the framework of everything else that fits that's in the campaign. But I also thought if I found this video, I would want some practical stuff of like, okay, these are all good pieces of advice, but there. So those are 3 things you can literally do if you have a game tonight. You just have to do a little bit of prep homework and pull from the backgrounds and figure out which one of those you want to use and then how it ties to your current campaign. But there you go. There's a little bit of inspiration for you.
Yeah, and just something quickly to add on to that is if you decide to use any of those things that Tim just said, if you can find people you've already used in your game before to tie into those things, it makes it all the better. Like if the bounty hunter was hired by the last town that the party was in and that they caused a bunch of problems there, or the famous person was a person that they talked to, 4 sessions ago who's now, coming back to talk to them, of like, it makes it feel a lot less jarring of just like, oh, suddenly it takes away that thing of that Tim was mentioning earlier of like the sudden shift in paradigm of like, oh wait, where'd this bounty hunter guy come from? It's like, well, chances are at some point in the campaign, the party's done something that'll draw the attention of someone who's going to want to work against them, or they've interacted with somebody important, or at least one step removed from somebody very important. So harken back to those people and tie them back into the game, because it's way less jarring and way easier to reintegrate elements that have already been used than it is to like totally introduce new things. So if you want to bring in something new that's going to sort of shake up your own enjoyment, but still have it feel organic, finding threads to tie them back in through the rest of the game makes that way easier.
that's a lot of concrete advice, which is very helpful. And I just wanted to drive home the idea that it's important to remember that your feelings about a concept aren't always entirely true to themselves, if that makes sense, right? If you know in your mind you're excited, you're going to go hang out with your friends and you're going to go make jokes. And at the very least, it's a fun thing. More like, Tim, what you were saying, if you're going to go, to a friend's house or go eat with somebody. It's just important to remember that it's not always that the way you feel is caused by a reason, but it's not always the reason you think it is. So that there's nothing wrong with just going, I understand that I feel that way. I'm just going to push through it. And of course, practical tips will help you do that more reasonably. I just think there is in everything, whether it's going out with your friends or playing RPGs or doing something you promised somebody you would do, like help them move. Your feelings about it are generated by something other than the events themselves. And I think that's just an important thing for everyone to remember as they go through life.
Yeah, that's huge. And then the final thing that I was just going to say is it's interesting to need inspiration with a deadline, because it's hardest to find when you're under pressure or feel anxiety. And so it's a catch-22, right? Because you need to prep for the game. The game's in 2 days and you kind of have nothing. You have blank note cards and you don't even really remember what happened last session maybe. And you're not feeling it. I'm like, yeah, I would rather, I actually want to go use my grill right now. And I've got this new recipe I've been wanting to try. I got this app, and it's hard because you're looking around like, I just need quick inspiration real quick. I just need to feel this awesome emotion that is stirring and that I'm passionate about just real quick. It's like those two don't necessarily go together. So my final piece of advice is try to relax your shoulders, take a deep breath, and look around, because we are in an age where more than ever there are groundbreaking, gorgeous, inspirational pieces of media being released at an exponential rate. We can't even, there's no way that we could enjoy all of the things that are being made right now. That blew my mind when it hit me. It's like, I literally there's no way I can watch everything that exists. Not even close. And it's doubling. Go on Netflix, scroll around until you find a thumbnail that you like and watch the movie. Go on Spotify, type in the search bar, Release Radar. It's like kind of on the down low playlist that Spotify makes for you every Friday based on other things you listen to that are new releases. Find an album you used to love from 10 years ago and re-listen to that thing. Inspiration is everywhere. It's just difficult to catch it and bottle it when you need to point it at a D&D game. But even riding off of the peripheral feeling can help. So go Google best comic books of 2007. There are so many avenues to go down to just find something. Read. I mean, I could keep going and going. I won't. But the point is, well, actually, I'll do one more. There are literally thousands of public domain literary works. Grab a quote from an awesome poet, drop it in your session prep, and now you're inspired. Why is that important? What does that mean to you? What do the words mean? What do they mean to your world? So yeah, that's my very long-winded way of saying we really have no excuse to not be inspired. It's just the way we look at things. And it definitely is justifiable, though, too. So it's about finding a balance and having fun.
One last thing that I'll say to sort of wrap it up that I think is really important when it comes to RPGs and inspiration, and really just any sort of hobby activity like this, is there's going to be some times where you try all these different tips and nothing's working and you just don't feel it. And maybe the game's not that great, and it's okay. It's okay if that happens. It happens to everybody. It's happened to me many, many times, and it will happen to me many, many more times. I know that we put a lot of like stock into these games, and they're a lot of fun, and we like try really hard to make them good, and that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, it is just a game. If you have a bad RPG session, no one's getting hurt, no one's dying, no one's, unless you have some really volatile friends, you're not losing any friends or family over it. It's not the end of the world if you don't feel it and it doesn't come out the way that you want it. It might sting, but the game goes on. You get over it. Next time, maybe you're more excited. Next time you find a way to get connected. That's okay. It's not a huge deal if you just can't quite make it happen. And I think it's important to say that it's okay if that happens, And also, you're not alone in that happening. You haven't failed. You don't need to like quit or re-examine your role in the game. Like it's okay. You're gonna be okay. Even if it doesn't work out, you can't get the inspiration. You'll be fine, and you're surrounded by millions of other people who have been through that exact same scenario and find the excitement to come through next time. And you just gotta pick up and go through and know that even if the fire wasn't there for this one, it'll come back and you'll go on and you'll make it happen, So it's okay to feel that way. And it's okay, if you can find a tip that'll bring it into you that session, awesome. Use it and, carry on. And if you can't, then you can't. Like, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like be really, really great. And like, it's okay sometimes just to be fine, when it comes to RPGs. Like I said, the biggest consequence, the biggest disaster is that it's like not quite as fun as it might be another time, which is like such low stakes. I mean, we make it so high stakes in our head, and it's really not, That's not to say you shouldn't try or that it doesn't matter, but you don't need to beat yourself up over it.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic note to end the video on. So in the comments, I really want to keep it positive. And so kind of like what you're saying, Jeff. So in the comments, what inspires you? What's something that's been inspiring you lately? And if you have had this problem where you've run into it, what have you done to overcome it? And you could share anything. You could share an anime, a book, a song, whatever. Just share it with us. Maybe it will inspire us. And so maybe that's what the comments can actually be for this video it's kind of a wellspring of like, hey, where do you go when you need to get inspired? And just, I don't know, let's see how that works. But we're Tabletop Terrors. We're all about fun, creativity, and of course, tabletop games. If you like this video, we have plenty of others. Consider subscribing. And if you hit the notification bell, you should be alerted every Sunday and Thursday when we post new videos. Let's wrap this up with a Tabtarian toast.
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
May you conquer everything you undertake.
Sláinte.
So, Tim, it's funny that you say what you said about not being it. Literally, there being so much content out there that you can't watch it all. And I want to say that to anyone watching. I am going to be 30 years old this year. Tim is a little bit older than I am. And there used to be a time where you could literally watch every good show and movie that was released. Literally, that was so possible. What that means is, I learned the other day that Netflix's whole business is hinged on creating content effectively until every person has Netflix. Like, we keep paying them and they keep making stuff to interest people, to tell our friends about, so that they will then get Netflix. And the end goal is that every single person pays for Netflix and they can just make content forever. So get Netflix, everybody, because there's a lot of really good stuff on there.
This was not an endorsement.
But if you wanted to pay us Netflix, because I know you're watching Netflix,
You know you're at
Then-
least listening.
give me a call. Just me though. They don't. The other two don't need to